twee. Are any of you familiar with the term twee? Some of you? Yes?
Oh, yes.
It's this weird little piece of British slang, and I've only ever encountered it in two contexts. Ridiculing hipsters and dismissing Wes Anderson films. In fact, last night, partly in preparation for this, I Googled twee definition. And like the fifth item down the page had Wes Anderson right in the first sentence. So I finally decided, after hearing that word applied to this filmmaking several times and sort of guessing at what they meant by it, I would look up the definition. And so these definitions are drawn from several different online dictionaries, but this is what they say it means. Excessively sweet, sentimental and pretty, effectively or excessively dainty, delicate, cute, or quaint. Something that is sweet almost to the point of being sickeningly so. In film, twee has come to become closely associated with quirky, and both of them are usually used in derogatory ways. Wes Anderson is a very polarizing filmmaker. I wouldn't say that he's one of those filmmakers that everyone either loves or hates. But the people who hate him with a real remarkable zeal. According to them, his films are precious, self-conscious, aggressively eccentric, too clever by half, hipster catnip, I liked that one, cinematic Instagrams, I thought that one was pretty clever too.
Oh my.
I'm a fan, of course, but it didn't help his reputation that, especially after Rushmore and then with the Royal Tenenbaums, he helped to kind of launch a trend in quirky filmmaking, particularly quirky comedies. And some of them were so obviously influenced by his films like Garden State and Rocket Science and Little Miss Sunshine, that they're clearly the highest form of flattery, even if they don't live up to the originals. And then there were some where the influence just went horribly wrong, like The Family Stone, which I think is almost a desecration of the Royal Tenenbaums. So this assumption came to be attached to his films, particularly considering them as part of the larger catalog of all the quirky movies that were coming out, that his films are all elegant surface, that they're pretty confections that leave the viewer hungry for something real and solid, something that is not twee. Well, I think the twee critics are wrong about Anderson. And to dismiss his films, and I'm going to stick to Rushmore, just Rushmore as much as possible, as all style and no substance is to lose the plot, in my estimation. That the charges usually boil down to one of two things, that he is either sentimental or insincere, and I think they're wrong about both of those things. Watch Rushmore, and as Jim mentioned, that was co-written by Owen Wilson, and also features the other Wilson brother, Andrew.
Oh, that's right.
Watch for him as the baseball coach.
The third Wilson.
What was that?
The third Wilson.
Yes, the Zeppo. And see how wrong they are about this film. They are right that Anderson has a powerful, very distinctive style. He is an auteur. If there is any auteur in this age of filmmaking, it would be Wes Anderson. The obsessive attention to costumes and art direction, the symmetry, the beautiful color palette, the slow-mo, the wide-angle lens, the strangely out-of-time feeling. Wes Anderson movies, even when they're set in the present, feel sort of like they're also set in the past. The soundtracks, which manage to permanently fuse certain songs to certain scenes in your brain, that's Wes Anderson's filmmaking. But if it was all, or I shouldn't say but, if it was all style and no substance, I'd still admire the style, but it's not. I would argue, and I liked, what was it called, the substance of style? Is that what that was?
Yeah, the substance of style.
Yeah, I have in my notes, I believe he's doing something substantial with his style, something substantial with the characters and the narrative and the things that he's trying to say. In this film, I would just suggest that you particularly watch the performances and appreciate what good performances he got. Now, this is his first major film. Bottle Rocket was a student project. Like, it started as a short film that they They went to Sundance, and I'm trying to remember what successful filmmaker they made.
Well, it was James Brooks from,
that's right.
yeah, who had a lot of success on television with Cheers and The Simpsons, and also is a director in his own right with films like Broadcast News.
Yes, and Wes Anderson, by all accounts, does not lack confidence, and is quite willing to go to bat for his work, and managed to get James Brooks' support at Sundance, and that's how Bottle Rocket ended up being made into a feature film. But when they're making Rushmore, he's still an unestablished filmmaker, largely. So there's really only one big name in Rushmore, and that's Bill Murray. Now there are a couple very solid character actors, Seymour Cassel and Brian Cox, who most of us would instantly recognize from all kinds of films. But the rest of the cast was pretty much unknown at this point. And yet, everyone in this movie gives such solid, distinctive, memorable performances, including the children, like Max's friend Dirk, or Magnus, or Margaret Yang. And then the female lead, Olivia Williams, who went on to be in Joss Whedon's series, Dollhouse, is lovely and graceful and pink-cheeked. She's like an advertisement for English womanhood in this movie. But it really is it's a two-man show. She doesn't have a lot to do compared to Jason Schwartzman and Bill Murray. Jason Schwartzman was 18. He was born in 1980. I checked. So he was a teen, playing a teen, and he plays it with such bravado. I mean, Max, like Wes Anderson, has enormous confidence in himself, and it comes through in Jason Schwartzman's performance. I think and it was his first film too. I double-checked that. An amazing first performance, and especially the range, because Max is charming, and Max is incredibly annoying, and sometimes he's disturbing, all in the same performance, and all plausibly. As for Bill Murray, I told Kevin, I think this is his best performance ever. At least his best dramatic performance, and it's a comedy. But you will see that this is, for him, largely a dramatic performance. He's played this part in a lot of different films by this point. I mean, Lost in Translation, he got more press for, more attention for a similar kind of character. A man in kind of midlife decline and just deep sadness and loneliness at where his life is at. And he does it with such restraint in this film. There are a couple scenes, and I haven't watched Rushmore in several years, and it's not available streaming on Netflix, as it turns out. So I didn't get to watch it this week. But there are scenes locked in my mind where he accomplishes so much with just his eyes, or just like the twist of his mouth, really controlled and yet very emotionally complex. I don't know if anybody besides Buster Keaton could look so sad with just their eyes as Bill Murray is capable of doing. And as he's been in every one of Wes Anderson's films except one. And I would suggest in Moonrise Kingdom it's a similar performance. It's a supporting role rather than a central role. My larger defense of Wes Anderson against the charge of sentimentality or insincerity is that is when you are only looking at the surface. There are always darker themes at work in his films. I think they're very funny. I recognize they don't work for everyone. I think they're very funny, but they're always dealing with anxiety and obsessions and disappointment and mortality, always mortality. I was just reading, nope, you haven't all seen Moonrise Kingdom. I almost gave a Moonrise Kingdom spoiler.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, but I'll get to revisit that film sometime in the future. People always act surprised that something painful happens in these movies because they have the idea in their head that they're just light, fluffy films, but there's darkness in there too. And here in Rushmore, we add the humiliation of youth and the deep disappointments of middle age. And quirky or not, as I've already mentioned in Max's case, Anderson does not treat the failings of his characters lightly. They are allowed to be very unlikable sometimes and to do things that are really indefensible. And yet there is a sense that the filmmaker still loves them, and so we still love them. I remember the first time outside of the festival that Jim and Silwan and I did something together was to go see Garden State. And I remember sitting in the back of their car, I think, talking about why I liked Wes Anderson films, because Garden State is so clearly inspired by Wes Anderson, and saying he has such affection for his characters, as messed up as they are. And that's a delicate balance that I don't think every filmmaker is able to achieve, and it shows up in a lot of quirky filmmaking. I watched the movie Bridesmaids. I don't know if any of you saw that. It was all right. But I thought it's a romantic comedy. You should be rooting for the central character to wind up happy and in love. But I thought Kristen Wiig's character was repulsively crazy. And I didn't want the nice Irish cop to end up with her. I wanted him to run as far away from her as possible. Is my opinion. On the other hand, in some movies like Juno, for instance, or 500 Days of Summer, I think the main character, you know, that there's another word that is often used, well, mostly for Zooey Deschanel, adorkable. Those characters are treated as so adorkable that their failings are taken very lightly. They're so cute that it doesn't matter when they do the wrong thing or they hurt someone. And then in movies like Napoleon Dynamite that push the quirkiness so far, it doesn't matter because the characters are no longer recognizably human. But not here. In Rushmore, the flaws are real enough to be disturbing and off-putting sometimes, and so are the longings and the emotions. And so we do care what will happen to these people. And we, as Christians, we can be receptive to that kind of filmmaking in which people are both deeply, truly, unattractively screwed up, but also genuinely valuable and worthy of care and affection, because it's the posture that we say God takes toward all of us, fallen and quirky as we are, and not always in an adorable way. And I recognize myself in both Max and Herman, probably more Herman the older I get. In Max, I recognize myself in his pettiness and his vanity and his striving to be taken seriously, and in the tension that Herman feels between where he is in life and where he thought he would be, where he hoped to be. They're both childish, really, as becomes evident, and that is a very Wes Anderson theme that was mentioned in the video. His films are enmeshed in the world of children, even when they're about adults, as in the case of the Royal Tenenbaums. They are full of children who are trying to transition to adulthood and often acting the part of adult before they're really there. And they're full of adults who are trying to get back to some better time that they remember, often clumsily and gracelessly. Wes Anderson shows over and over, very artfully, I think, that we never really outgrow our childhood.
All right.